Welcome to the Steven Podcast, a one-time podcast to shake off a mental to-do item that I will never publish. This podcast is sponsored by nobody, because you couldn't pay me to listen to myself, so why would other people want to listen to my podcast? Sarcasm aside, this podcast is made to check off a mental to-do list item, and I'm going to make a podcast out of an article that I wrote earlier this week about 20 years of Xbox and me. Last Monday, I got a message from my brother Kenny, and he sent me a message that says something like, they are making a Halo series. And my lack of immediate, I know, I always wanted one crying guy emoji response must have been a big red flag for him, because he immediately asked me if I wasn't watching the Xbox anniversary stream. And that is when I realized that I forgot that stream was happening that night. And why does me missing a stream of Xbox on a Monday evening trigger an alarm? Well, there are two different reasons. The first one is that I don't think I have ever missed an Xbox stream. And the second one is that Xbox, me, and my brother go way back. About 20 years back, to be specific. Well, my brother and me, we go even longer back than that, but that's besides the point. I think it's time to go down for a trip down memory lane. It is entirely possible that some parts of this post were already mentioned in a blog post that I wrote before, especially the things about Joomla, in which case you can just press B to skip those parts. Now it's time to pick a chair, find an available controller of which the batteries aren't dead, and to log in. Let's go. Before there was Xbox. When I was a young nerd, I started playing games on my dad's PC. We are talking about PCs that were still named after the processors that they were built around, like the 86, the 186, and the 286, in a time where you would wonder what a Pentium is. And I also often ask myself if the And looking back, I should have also asked myself if the turbo boost button actually does something. I am pretty sure that the answer is no, but I was convinced back in the day that was the case. Anyway, I am going way off topic. Back then, we played games on 3.5-inch discs, which you younglings might only know as the save icon. And games like Commander Keen and Cosmic were usually bought on a single disc. And if you wanted to unlock the full game, you would then need to call a number in the United States to order them. And of course, that never happened, not for me at least. We weren't in the position to call to the United States to buy a game. And as I wrote the draft for this post, I just realized that I never really finished Cosmic Adventure. Now, through the years, of course, innovations like the CD have led to even more games, which weren't all equally legally acquired, and to playing classics such as the original Age of Empires. Times were good and fun was had, and back then I was more of a gamer than my brother Kenny, which is something that would be impossible to imagine these days if you knew the both of us. I remember one specific event where I went bonkers one summer day and I finished Cosmos Cosmic Adventure in a full day. Well, the freeware version anyway. I played from the morning until the evening. Unlike most kids, me and my brother didn't really grow up with consoles due to money issues. But we did get an Atari 1600 at some point, which was a big investment for us back in the day. Oddly enough, I don't remember us playing it a lot. We were mostly playing on the PC, but that's all a sidetrack. Anyway, the money that we could afford to spend on hobbies mostly went to the family computer, which was both a workhorse and a game center. Now, why the flashback? Because a family computer made it possible to become an Xbox nerd. My dad self-taught himself a bunch of things on his PC, and back in the days, He was basically considered to be a magician because of it. Because he knew how to use a computer, he could pivot jobs from warehouse worker to assistant accountant to IT manager, all for the same company. And he basically rolled into the IT field and even wrote a book on Office at some point and got a bunch of connections. Somewhere before the year 2000, that led to my dad telling me that he was writing for a website and an online newsletter talking about IT, and I remember thinking, yeah, that's cool, but what does it have to do with me? You know, like all the edgy kids. What does that thing that my parents do have to do with me in any shape or form? You know, that thing. Anyway, they were looking for someone to review games for them because they were contacted by PR companies and they didn't really have someone in the crew to do it. And since I could write and play video games, maybe I wanted to do it. And if I say I could write, I mean like I could form words and sentences together. I don't mean that anyone thought that I was a great writer in any shape or form. And I said, sure, I guess. How do you want to do it? And nobody really knew what had to happen. So I had to basically figure it out for myself. And I tried to sort of base my reviews on what I did in a PC magazine, of which I no longer remember the name. That was basically one of the only magazines that did reviews of games back then. The start of my game journalism career was on PC, of course. But one day, my dad brought a big box inside, which was a bit unusual. He usually just brought, CD cases with him. And so it was definitely way too big to contain a game. And it was sent by Microsoft, and we could test it for a few weeks. But what was inside that mystery box? Well, the box contained the original Xbox, a console that Microsoft had just launched, a launch that I completely missed, by the way. I wasn't really paying attention at anything in that area. And we hooked the Xbox up to the TV, and we were told that we could test it for a few weeks. And when I say we, I mean me and my brother, because, like I said, he didn't play games as much as me, but he did play a lot of Age of Empires. But suddenly he was completely captivated by the Xbox. And that would only get worse once he started playing on it. I got so excited by the console that I wrote what I sometimes call the best article that I ever wrote. And it was probably also the longest and the most detailed article that I have ever written, to the point that it led to a big argument with the owners of the website and newsletter because it was way too long for them, but they published it anyway. I basically gushed over the console and the games, but I didn't really realize what would happen from there. I had the mindset, well, the Xbox is going back anyway, and after that it's basically over. There is no way we're going to be able to buy an Xbox. And once the console had to be returned, me and my brother decided to basically buy our own. We borrowed some money from our parents or asked them to invest. And from that moment we were hooked and bought the original Xbox. As you may know, the original Xbox was home to some real classics like Halo, Fable, and Crimson Skies. And it was also home to games like Project Gotham Racing and the very first Forza Motorsport games, of which I apparently both have the retail copy and the demo version over here. On Monday, I said on Twitter that my favorite Xbox era was the Xbox 360 era because it was home to the games I loved most. But when I started to write the article this podcast is based on, I realized that that isn't true. And I have to change my answer to the pre-Xbox One era. You know, the combination of the original Xbox and Xbox 360. That was my favorite era when it comes to games. Now, the Xbox 360 era was certainly the longest Xbox era, and the proof is in the entire shelf that it takes up in my game room, and the one that makes Xbox, or made Xbox hot. It also introduced us to Tragedy with the Red Ring of Death, but it also brought us many, many more games a lot of them of which I had to review and got for free. It also brought us the original Kinect. It introduced DLC, Xbox Live, and much more. Now, editor's note is that I initially wanted to write that it was also the launch platform for the Forza series, but apparently the Forza series started on the original Xbox, which I discovered when I looked through the CD cases. During the 360 era, I was still playing game journalist because I wasn't doing it professionally in any shape or form, and I tested a bunch of games, but near the end of the era, somehow, for some reason, I got fed up with reviewing video games. It really started to feel like a chore, like, yeah, there's another game and I have to play it. I started to kind of rush through them and through the articles, like just play it and get it over with. It really started to feel like a job for which I wasn't paid for. What didn't help was the fact that the games I got were more frequent, but the quality of the games also wasn't as great. You know, we got more games from different developers, and some of them are so bad that I never touched them again after initially reviewing them. You probably know what that's like. There are just some games that you never want to touch again. Now, what certainly didn't help that while my brother was playing and enjoying the video games, I kind of got addicted to social media instead. And as a result, I started to, ignore gaming. I let my brother play the games. I just occasionally reviewed the games. And I started to, look for likes on social media. And that led to me basically stopping with video games. And I started to write about a niche CMS tool to build websites, because people were responding to that, like literally in the comments and on Twitter. And I rarely got comments on my video game reviews, and basically I told myself, wow, this is where it's at. I have to write about this CMS, and video games are just stupid. And how foolish the younger me was. I basically stopped reviewing games, and looking back, that was definitely a big mistake. I'm not saying that I could have made a career out of reviewing video games, because my articles weren't that fantastic or professional, but throwing out gaming as a hobby as a whole instead of chasing some likes, that was a really stupid thing to do that took me an embarrassing long time to recover from. While my attention waned, the Xbox One era arrived, and with that also disappointment. The guy I always call the suit, Don Metric, wanted to repurpose the Xbox as a media console, and games were basically an afterthought. I believe that the launch of the Xbox One and even the presentation was a disaster. All we got to play were some third-party games and some original IPs that were getting stale. And developing new IPs, it was like they were only interested in developing new things, such as selling you NFL subscriptions that weren't even available in Europe. And otherwise, if it weren't new media things, they weren't interesting. And gamers should just accept that the Xbox isn't a gaming console. Although the launch was pretty dramatic, and I told myself that the Xbox was basically going to shit because of it, I was still an Xbox hopeful. My brother and me bought an Xbox One in Germany because it would, at the point that it arrived in Germany, it would still take months to come to Belgium. And we told ourselves that we would just play the third-party games that arrived, such as Watch Dogs, which, if you ask me, is still the superior Watch Dogs game. Not because it was the first Xbox One game, but because it had the best gripping story. Edgy hackers are fun for like 5 minutes, and the gimmick in Watch Dogs Legion is fun for like half an hour, but they lack the storytelling and the drama of the first movie. Not the movie, the video game. And I don't even know the name of the main character from Watch Dogs 2. Anyway, I enjoyed that game and some other IPs, but I didn't play as much. Remember, I was still in that I have to blog about the boring CMS that nobody reads about at that point anymore mode. We bought a console together, me and my brother, and buying that console meant, of course, that we had to figure out some way to split it up after my brother would eventually move out. He was engaged at that point and he would get married in the next year or so, but we decided to buy the Xbox together anyway, and we would figure things out later. Well, not if I had a say in it, because although I didn't play the games that much at that point, for his wedding gift I bought him something that many people would probably frown upon as a wedding gift, but which made perfect sense to me and to us. I bought him a brand new Xbox One as a wedding gift, as a reminder for all the good times we had sharing a console, and also so that his wife couldn't object to him buying a new console instead of some married people expense. No, I'm kidding. I mostly bought it because, it was a big expense at the time, and I knew that he really wanted it, but I wanted to take away, that the excuse of not buying it, so I just said, you know what, I'm just buying it for him. It makes sense for me to buy him that Xbox. It is something that would have been typical for me and him and that relationship, so it made perfect sense to me. But for other people, it might have been like a gaming console for a married couple, that is like the least considerate gift ever. But I wasn't there to please people, not offline anyway. And he also got me an Xbox related gift. As a best man gift, he got me a Titanfall Xbox One controller. And so that makes him the guilty person who set off my small collection of Xbox controllers. There is one golden rule that you need to know when you should ever enter my room about my shelf with controllers. I have a shelf with controllers on display. In the article, you can see them. It's that if they are on that shelf on display, they're not used to play. You can use one of the 5 normal controllers that I have somewhere in the house, but not anyone on display, especially not the Chrome ones or the Xbox 360. I think I never even unpacked them, and it is going to stay that way. Now, the next section is called In Phil We Trust, and the question that I ask myself is, how do you rekindle the spark of winter eenmaals in someone who lost his way in the hunt for likes? And one thing was by taking them to Gamescom. The second is by appointing Phil Spencer as the head of Xbox, and by making Xbox a game console / great again. When Xbox announced the Xbox One X, I was already getting a little excited about games again. I had visited Gamescom at least once at that point, I think, and that made me a little excited. I'm not saying that I was playing again every day, but I was starting to get into the hobby again. Now, Phil Spencer had also taken the reins of the Xbox brand, and he was trying to steer it in a new direction. So when the Xbox was announced, I ordered the Xbox One X Scorpio Edition, and I wrote in my article that the healing started. I still thought that Xbox was lacking games, something which I still feel at this point, but I got more interested in hobby again. I even completed some games during that area. Don't ask me which ones, but I definitely remember completing games on the Xbox One X. And Xbox was doing a lot right again, and although I was no longer a hardcore gamer, that got me excited to play even more. And like I said, I didn't miss an Xbox show. Those were more of a common thing now. At some point during the Xbox One X cycle, I even got excited about developing. I always get excited about a lot of things and then do something for 5 months, and that wasn't different. But I set myself a goal and I said I want to develop something for the Xbox One. just something. It doesn't have to be a big thing. From that point on, I basically said to myself, look, you don't have to do complex things anymore. Just set yourself small goals and do that thing and get into the habit of doing small things, even if you never publish them or share them. Just start doing things. And that game app was one of them. So I built something with the Lab 1010 splash screen, and I managed to play that app on my Xbox One through the developer mode. And it wasn't much. You couldn't even push a button or the start button. It was just the splash screen and not even in the right file format. But it was kind of exciting that I could do that with basically a free version of Visual Studio, a €20 license from Microsoft on my own Xbox. I'm going to fast forward now to the Xbox Series X era. The era where games are starting to come back to the console. And it's also the era where my brother had to put us on a waiting list for a pre-order list 8 months in advance to order a Series X. There was no doubt that we were buying that Xbox Series X at that point because Game Pass and the other games that had been announced, but also because of the 4K gaming and performance that we couldn't get out of a game PC for that money. Although I do have a gaming PC worth thousands of dollars that is capable of awesome things, such as playing Age of Empires 4. But my brother is big on Xbox gaming, and while my brother is big on Xbox gaming and me as well, so I couldn't skip on the console, especially with all the things you could do. I can basically play all these games on my PC as well, but when I get back from working an entire day, I don't want to sit in front of a PC. I know that there is a difference between playing a video game and working, but it's like a mindset thing for me. I don't want to start a laptop because that can already feel like work. I just want to fire up a console and start playing. Anyway, the 4K era had arrived, and that meant I had to buy a new TV. I wonder every day if games are really in 4K, by the way. And since my surround system literally burned itself up, it had to be replaced with a headset with Dolby Atmos support, and the Series X became the new king in the game room. Because of backwards compatibility, I had to move around some consoles, and the old Xbox One isn't even plugged in anymore. Its place is now taken by the Xbox One X. There isn't really a point of plugging in the Xbox One. It would just consume power because all the games can be played on the Series X or the Xbox One X when me and my brother are having a bro night, and then I'm the one playing on the Xbox One X and my PC monitor. Only the best for my guests. And what can I say? Gaming is now fun again, and at this point in time, I am now consciously making time for it for the simple reason that I feel like it makes me happy. It gives me, joy. It is something I enjoy doing again. I never sit there again and thinking, whoa, this is a chore. It's something I enjoy doing. And to make that time, I am doing something that would have been impossible during my like-chasing era. I am now actively staying away from social media like Twitter and other, platforms. And Game Pass provides me tons of entertainment and new classics like Halo Infinite and Forza Horizon 5, while I wait for the one game that I have been waiting for a long time, ever since Fable 2 is coming out, and that is the new Fable game that is being developed by Playground. Yeah, I know there was a Fable 3 game, but I never really enjoyed that. I don't know why that is, but I don't think I even finished it. And seeing my brother play it, I thought yeah, that's not the kind of game that I want to play. I know it was a Fable game, but it wasn't the kind of Fable game I wanted to play. I have also arrived at a point where I'm kind of feeling an urge to create gaming content again, and I'm aware that I missed the train years ago, and that at this point, streaming games is the new written review. And I kind of doubt that you'll see me ever do that because talking and gaming at the same time, it isn't something I'm great at. I'm not even great at using the webcam and speaking at the same time. If I'm completely honest, I hate the sound of my own voice as well. And I'm just not the kind of, excited personality that is streaming games. I would just be staring at the screen and just playing. It wouldn't be very entertaining, and it also wouldn't. I feel like it would feel like a chore, like immediately, like if you have to schedule that shit. But I know that I have to schedule something, some kind of content. The question is just what it's going to be. But maybe I can do something with video. That is something I have gotten somehow excited about as well. I am not currently making a lot of videos because I'm not really feeling the content that I used to make. Again, niche CMS. All my article ideas are revolving around that, and I don't really want to cover that anymore. So if I want to make gaming content, I will have to find something that I can, get behind and have fun with, but I'll have to figure out what it is. So maybe videos. I'm not sure how I would handle that. Or maybe I can finally learn how to program and create the game I've been talking about. Pixel Boy 3000 with thousands of exclusive skins for just €1. But either way, I think that there is a big chance that I'm going to create some sort of gaming content soon. Maybe not something that I'll publish or at a big scale. I don't think that I'm going to be looking for, review copies and an audience. It would probably just be something lighthearted and fun. Either way, that would mean that I am going full circle soon. So, Xbox, if you do happen to have an extra copy of Halo Infinite that you don't need anymore, hit me up. Steven, Toretto X84, logging off.